My name is William Andrew Moyer III. I am a social studies teacher and I teach U.S. history, African American studies, and world religions. What was my childhood like? Interesting. I grew up in Silver Spring, Maryland, went to Blair High School. I was a Boy Scout, really loved Boy Scouts. In fact, at one time I wanted to be a forest ranger, but that didn't pan out. But I had a pretty typical childhood, growing up. I had an uncle who was in World War II. He fought in Germany, brought back a lot of artifacts from the war. He was also transferred to the Philippines when the Germans surrendered and mop-up operations against the Japanese there. Brought back all kinds of artifacts, and when he passed away, he gave them to me. But he was only 18 or 19 when he collected all these artifacts. When he got out of the war, he went to school, became a teacher. So he ended up being taught elementary school, and then he became a college teacher and a professor. Oh, I had some really terrific high school teachers. In fact, the one teacher I remember the most was Vince Puglisi. He was a football coach and he taught U.S. history. But he taught U.S. history like a football coach. I'm not really quite sure how to describe that, but it was the class that really got me hooked on history. What motivated me to become a teacher? Well, I started out actually as a mailman in the post office after high school, but I always wanted to get a higher education. I ended up becoming a minister, a pastor for 30 years. But within my role as a pastor, I did a lot of teaching. And I loved teaching. And I would hold classes in the church, teaching various things. And then finally, I decided I wanted to go into full-time teaching. So I ended up going back to college and got a PhD in history in order to teach in college. However, there weren't any jobs in history in college because, as I was told by one administrator in the college, that history was not a growing field. So I ended up, I had some friends in high school, and they said, well, why don't you look at high school? And they set me up in a high school here in Howard County, and I liked it. I got bit by the bug, so I went to a job fair and said I'd like to become, a high school teacher. And they said, well, we love your credentials, with a PhD, but we can't hire you. I said, you can't hire me? No, you have to go back to school and get certified. I ended up having to go back to school, get another college degree, a master's degree in education this time, so now I have 4 college degrees.
Wow.
So 3 wasn't enough. I had to go get another one. Oh, not till, can be anywhere between 5 and 7. What's the first thing I do? I get myself a cold Coke. Kick back in my lazy boy for a little while. Well, I have 125 students, so it can vary widely from, a couple dozen to multiples. There's some days, like weekends when I'm grading, I'm spending most of the day grading. So, yeah, it depends. Whoa, that's a good question. Yeah, there's sometimes you can, I feel overwhelmed as a teacher, especially when we have lots of different events happening around the same time, especially toward the end of the quarter when you have lots of grades to do, catch-up work, trying to get students, where they need to be. It can be pretty overwhelming. As a matter of fact, I've done a lot of different jobs in my life, but I have to say that being a high school teacher is the most exhausting work I've ever done. And so when I come to Saturday, I just like to sleep late. Just don't bother me. I sponsor the Model UN Club and also the Rho Kappa Social Studies Honor Society. When I came into the system, I had never heard of either one of them. I was approached, by some students who apparently were looking for someone to sponsor the Model UN. I had never heard of it, didn't know anything about it. But I thought, well, it sounds like a club that must have a global vision. And so I agreed, and I have enjoyed this particular club, especially. And we have a event every year in February where we go to Baltimore for the Johns Hopkins University Model UN Conference, and it's 4 days and 3 nights, Hilton Hotel, and that's a lot of fun. I look for a student to have a curiosity. The reason I like history is because the word history actually comes from a Greek word, historia. Historia means to investigate. Now, most people think that history is about dates, names, and places. Well, that's part of it. But in fact, history is about investigating what has happened, learning the different skills on how to investigate what has happened. History is a gateway into any subject. I asked my students at the beginning of the year, I said, name me one subject that doesn't have a history. And they can't, because every subject has a history. And so for me, that opens up the whole world. So if you have a sense of what history is about, and you don't have to know a whole lot about dates, names, and places per se, but if you understand the investigative, interpretive, contextualizing of history, you have opened up the whole world to yourself. Wow, that's a real good question. I think it's been a both and. Students challenge me, and I try to challenge them. I've been around a long time. You can tell by my gray hair that I'm one of these old dudes. But you see, I have a lot of experience historically, a lot of stories to tell, and that's one of the ways I like to communicate about history is the storytelling. But students ask lots of questions, and sometimes they ask questions I never even thought of, and I like that. I like that give and take, that I have with students. Trust, because when students skip class, when students don't do their work, when students are rude to the teacher, when students say, I want to go to the bathroom, and then they disappear for half an hour, or the principal or the vice principal brings them back to class because they've been wandering the hall. So all that breaks trust. If you want to have a good relationship, a really good relationship with your teacher, you need to have that trust where they can trust you. Trust is a very big factor. Not the only one. There's others too, like doing your work. Focus on. Be hungry for an education. Be hungry for knowledge. Knowledge is power. If you want your life to be powerful, you need to make your mind powerful, and you make your mind powerful through education.